Geetika to start her presentation on provisional attachment. And as I said, Honorable Supreme Court judge has said that provisional attachment provisions are draconian in nature. Geetika, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me here on this presentation, and especially for Uttarakhand chapter. I'll just quickly share my screen. I just hope this is visible to everyone.
Yeah, visible. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Very warm welcome to all the participants from Uttarakhand. I hope we all know that amid rising COVID cases, we all are taking care, and especially Uttarakhand, you have a lot of tourists coming over there. So please take care of yourself. You should observe the COVID appropriate behavior, and just hoping that the things are not as bad as they were the previous second wave. With this, note, I would just want to continue. Like Bimal sir has already set the context, so I'll not give you the background that what all I'm going to cover. I'll straight away come to the topic, which is regarding the provisional attachment of property or bank account. So before we see that there are certain amendments which have come up for this particular section, what is the entire concept of provisional attachment? Basically, the term itself says that provisional is something which is not final, and attachment is holding on or keeping it in control of the government authorities, so as the property or anything which is attached cannot be freely usable by the taxpayers whose property etc. is being attached. Now, why is there a need of having a provisional attachment? Even without getting into the legal provisions, the only concept behind having this kind of provision is to protect the interest of the government revenue. Why such apprehensions arise? Because there are certain nullified taxpayers, there are certain tax evaders who would want to do that, who would get into the tax evading activities and just wrap up the business and go away overnight. The very classic and very well-known cases are the circular trading cases, the bogus invoice companies, the shell companies. You will never find them where they are, from where they are operating, the paper companies. And therefore, even if the government tries to catch hold of them, until they have such powers to attach their properties or any specific assets with which they can make the recovery, it will be very difficult for the government to recover the revenue and the taxes that have been evaded by them. And definitely because of these kind of fake transactions which are happening, these types of provisions are very much needed. Like Bimal sir has already said that we are at no point of time advocating or canvassing for any of the tax evaders. The only purpose of having the discussions on this forum, touching upon the good or pros and cons of these provision, is to understand that as a bona fide taxpayer, where do I stand and how far the department can go against me or can impact my business transactions by taking their powers under these provisions. So recently, with effect from 1st January 2022, there has been a massive change in the provisions of this section. There was an earlier provision. Certain points have been highlighted. I'll touch upon each one of them in detail. And then there is an amendment which has happened in the, it was done in the budget 2020-21, but has been made effective only with effect from 1st January 2022. Now, what is the amendment that has happened? The provision as it was originally carved out in the law read in such a way that where during the pendency of any proceedings, under section 62, 63, 64, 67, 73, 74, the commissioner is of the opinion that for the purpose of protecting the government's revenue, they need to attach the property, which may also include the bank account, which should be belonging to the taxable person in such a manner as may be prescribed. There's a procedure given under the law. Now there is a change in the highlighted portion. I've highlighted for the ease of your reference because some part of the provisions have been amended. Now the provision have been amended to read as such, where after the initiation, so earlier the word was pendency, now it is initiation of any proceeding. Earlier the proceedings which were required to be pending were under section 62, 63, 64, 67, 73. Now they have given a wider ambit to cover the proceedings which have been initiated under chapter 12, 14 and 15 of the GST law. Again, the third part of the definition remains as such. And then coming to the last part, Earlier it was that only the property of a taxable person can be attached. Now property of any person which is belonging to taxable person or any person which is specified under section 122 1A can also be attached. Now all of a sudden, the doubt or the questions that come into the mind of every taxpayer is that what was the need of these changes? What is it that the government is thinking about, and what is it that is going behind the, behind the books or behind the veil that we are not able to understand, and why these changes are happening? So let's see what was the impact or what was the implications when the provisions which were originally worded, how it was being used, or maybe how it was being interpreted by the high courts, and was giving any relief or not giving any relief to any taxpayers. So just touching upon that part of the earlier definition, because the remaining part I'll take up when we'll discuss the post amended definition. What was the earlier provision? That where during the pendency of any proceedings under section 62, 63, 64, 67, 73, 74. Very clearly spelled out section, certain assessment relating sections, some inspection, search, seizure section, determination of tax under 73, 74. So only and only if any of the proceedings were pending under these specified sections, in those cases only the department or the tax authorities had the power to attach any of your property. If any of these proceedings have been completed or concluded, the high courts have clearly held that there is no need to attach the property because there are no powers with you. Now, the second question which comes is that how do you determine what is the proceeding, whether it has been completed, it is pending and all? Multiple high courts which have clearly clarified that when do you say that a proceeding is completed? Very classic case of Vinod Kumar Muralidhar Chechani by the Gujarat High Court. In this case, the search was conducted, the premises were inspected, certain seizure orders were given, and the officers they walked out of the premises after having the seizure order. And then they, for the purpose of recovery and all, there was no specific demand proceeding or recovery proceeding. Then there was this provisional attachment order. The issue went up to the High Court, and the High Court held that where is the proceeding which is pending under any of the specified section. You initiated search under section 67, you issued a seizure order, and the minute you walked out of the premises along with the seizure order and along with the seized documents, your proceedings under section 67 per se is completed. You don't have any right to have a continuous holding of the property because there is some more further investigation which is going to be carried out. This is something which was clearly laid down by Punjab and Haryana High Court in case of UVF India Global, that you cannot have a continuous attachment. If a particular section's proceeding have been completed, concluded, any order, or from your side the process has been done, you cannot keep on the property in, or you cannot issue another provisional attachment order in anticipation that there can be some more inquiries or demands which may arise due to further investigation. So this is one part where the High Court started giving relief to the taxpayers, that if the proceedings are not pending under any of these specified section, irrespective of fact that further proceedings may get initiated maybe under section 73, 74 of the show cause notice, etc. Till the time you have initiated those proceedings, previous proceedings once concluded, you don't have any power to attach the property. This was a brunt for the tax authorities, that they are not able to catch hold of those taxpayers who are actually the evaders. The other part of the section which has been amended is that only the property of the taxable person can be attached. There were instances where the tax officers were left right attaching the bank accounts, etc. of the, let's say, vendors or the business partners of the taxable person who's against whom any proceeding was being conducted. So the again court held that where have you ever initiated any proceeding under any of these people? If not, that just because there is a proceeding initiated against the person who's connected with them due to business terms, how can you even start attaching their properties or their bank accounts? There are no powers which are given under section 83 to you. Again, favorable judgments for the assessees, specifically Gujarat High Court in case of Bhavesh Kiti. So now what was the grievance that the tax officers were having, that if this is the kind of judgments and the decisions the courts are going to give, then how are we going to catch hold of the malified taxpayers? No doubt we all know that at ground realities are far different from what is written or understood as the departmental officer. the officers, they start, using these provisions and these tactics again, even the bona fide taxpayers. But since the law was worded in such a manner, they had no recourse but to lay these issues before the council. This was a specific agenda in the 40th council meeting where these issues were discussed, laid down before the council, saying that if this is how the courts are going to interpret the law, then we will never be able to catch hold of those taxpayers against whom any particular proceeding has been concluded and investigation is still going on. Just because I've done a search in the premise doesn't mean the investigation is over. Maybe proceeding under section 67 is over. I might still go and initiate the proceeding under 73 or 74 by issuing show cause notice or issuing demand. But if this is how the courts are going to interpret it, then we will have the entire purpose of this provision gets defeated. We don't get to protect the interest of the revenue. And the second part of the definition which needed amendment, again, the officers lay down the practical instances that wherever there are bogus taxpayers or people who are not complying, the circular trading people, they are just instruments in the entire transaction. The masterminds or the beneficiaries are someone else. So if the provision is worded in such restricted manner, I will never be able to catch hold of the ultimate person or beneficiary who is making benefit out of these transactions. Hence, after understanding the concept or the nuances which are being faced by the tax authorities or the ground realities which are actually leading to tax evasion, the provision was worded in such a manner to, number one, change the first part of the definition from pendencies to initiation. So now the law worded, it reads as if during the initiation of any proceedings under chapter 12, 14, 15. So wider power. Earlier it was some specific sections under which the proceedings need to be supposed to be pending for having such powers with the officers. Now chapter 12, 14, 15, which starts from self-assessment and goes till the arrest. So during these proceedings, anywhere, whether it is someone, whether it is self-assessment, even if it is any recovery proceeding at any point of time, if the officers have initiated these proceedings, they have the powers to attach the property. Now the second part is that the commissioner is of the opinion that these types of steps should be taken. No doubt the opinion has to be there. The major question that comes is that whether the commissioner can delegate the powers, very clearly held by the Gujarat High Court in Enpropron Enterprises, that the commissioner, when the word has been used under section 83, they talk about the commissioner itself. They cannot delegate the power because the power of delegation which have been given under section 5(3) of the Act is only when only in case the commissioner is of the commissioner in board and not the commissioner of central. So in this section 83, only your jurisdictional officer, the commissioner of your jurisdiction, only he can issue such a provisional attachment order. Any other person issuing such an order itself is null and void, and they cannot take any actions of attachment of property for any taxpayers. So very important point, when any such order is coming, you need to see that whether it is issued by the commissioner or not. Otherwise, the same can be challenged on the very same ground. Very important part that comes into play is that what is the opinion of the commissioner? The courts are very, very clear on this part that opinion is something which is based on some cogent and tangible material, not by way of any word of mouth or any hearsay or any public statement which has no basis. Even if they are getting some information, they need to do their own due diligence, and figure it out that whether this information is correct or not. Just because by way of any complaint coming from any person, because normally we see that business rivals and any person who's not having a good relation with you can always go and make a complaint against you. But that can itself not be the reason or a basis for a commissioner to start attaching the properties. He has to have his own work done. He has to have basis of making that opinion. Just because someone mentioned him will not be a basis, and he needs to prove that. Although all this is an internal document which is never shared or showed to the taxpayer, but yes, if at any point of time the matter is challenged before the courts, they need to present this before the courts, that basis which information or what is the basis of their forming such an opinion because of which they had attached the property of a taxpayer. Now, opinion should be what? The opinion should be that they have to protect the interest of the government revenue. Now, when do you say that the interest of a government revenue is hampered? Because let's say today I'm catching hold of any taxpayer. If this person absconds, he wraps up his business, I will not be able to recover the taxes. A person who is having a setup in the very old setup, he's a regular taxpayer. How can a commissioner form an opinion against him that he will run overnight? Any big organization cannot wrap up their business and just abscond just to save some taxes. I'm a regular taxpayer. I file taxes. I file my returns. I pay taxes on time. There can be certain issues where I might, do some due to some clerical error or some interpretation error, various issues. There can be some short payment or wrong payment of taxes, etc. That itself cannot be a reason to frame an opinion that you are taking such a draconian step to protect the interest of the revenue. Like Bimal sir earlier mentioned, that Supreme Court in the case of Radhakrishnan has very clearly laid out that these steps have to be taken as a very, very extreme steps, as a last resort, not as a routine matter. Just because there is some demand which the officers feel can be initiated against a taxpayer, the first step that they need not start attaching the property. They can always go ask for the information, check with the taxpayers, what is their opinion, why are they not paying taxes, is there some reason behind it, or if there is some non-payment, let's say there is some mistake from the taxpayers end, give them an opportunity to present their case, issue a show cause notice, let them file their reply, let them adjudicate and fight for their matter. Straight away attaching the property is something which should be not be done and should not be used as a harassment tool, which we are seeing today officers are actually doing. So this is something which every tax officer has to take care of. Specific guidelines have also been issued in this regard, but unfortunately we see that the officers tend not to follow those guidelines. But yes, to the rescue of the taxpayers, there are various high courts which have come to the rescue for the taxpayers, saying that if there is sufficient reason, that reason is backed by certain facts, and whenever you are attaching any property, you need to see that whether that property itself is good enough to recover the tax shortage, or there was in one of the cases the property was already attached to cover the shortfall of tax, and even then the bank accounts were attached. The court said that when you have already attached the property, why do you need to attach the bank account? Because this disrupts the business. When you have sufficient security from the government's revenue standpoint, so there is no need to attach bank account just to harass the taxpayer. So these are the views of the courts that have been laid down. Their decisions have been given by the courts that you need to ensure that whenever you are attaching, it is only and only to protect the interest of government revenue. Now, the last part that has been amended, that earlier it was only the property of taxable person which could be attached. Now it is even the third party, and it's not just any third party. Very clearly spelled out in the law that any person who is beneficiary to any such transactions, they have spelled out those transactions, in which case they will even catch hold of the third person and attach their property, because like I said in the initial part, these were the cases where the circular trading or bogus invoicing were happening, and the ultimate person was not even there in picture. The person who was being catch hold of will never have any asset. He's just a paper company, and the government or the authorities were never able to recover anything out of it. So very specific scenarios. So again, only the people who are getting into these kind of transactions are the persons should be get caught up with this kind of an provision. Any bona fide taxpayer should not be scared of such provisions, and they have their rights retained. What are the scenarios where these provisions can be applied? Supply of goods and services without issuance of invoice, the circular trading. Giving invoices again without supply of goods, again with the intent to pass on the credit. Availing credits without having goods and services and correct documents. And distributing of ITC in contravention section 20. So these are very specific situations where if any person is involved and that can be proved by the authorities, then even the third parties property and their bank accounts can be attached. So this is the power that has been extensive power that has been given to the authorities. But having said that, again, what is the the intent or what is the ratio that we can still carry from the previous High Court rulings is that these powers have to be used as sparing power. They cannot be used on a routine basis or to harass the assessees just to get money or extract money out of them. Wherever there is a revenue neutral situation, like you feel like whatever amount has been recovered or whatever property has been attached is good enough to recover the revenue. No need to attach further properties. Or in cases where any person has reversed the ITC and to that amount, to that extent, the tax demand has been offset, then no need to attach the property. At least he has secured that much of revenue. And very important, there has to be a reasonable apprehension. Just because you feel like that someone has evaded the tax without even giving him the opportunity to adjudicate, you cannot just start, issuing the provisional orders. The procedure is very simple. The provisional orders, attachment orders are given on the portal. They are never sent on email or by hand to the assessees. At the best, they are only communicated to the authorities under which your properties are there. So, for example, your bank accounts. In case of bank accounts, the banks are communicated that the bank accounts should be seized or should be attached and no transaction should happen. Same way, in the case of immovable property, the revenue authorities are intimated that no transaction or no sale purchase of these properties can happen because these are attached for the purpose of revenue. Any taxpayer who is not satisfied with this kind of an attachment can always file an objection within 7 days. And if it is accepted, the properties will be released. If it is not accepted, then unfortunately the taxpayers have only recourse left with them is to file a writ petition because there is no alternative remedy provided under law in case of any such rejection order. Now coming to the very interesting part, very detailed part has already been covered by Rana sir in his previous session about the search proceeding. I'll touch upon only the practical aspects of it, that what happens when the search team comes to your office. One thing that I would want to put it as a disclaimer that these are not exhaustive instances or exhaustive points that we have covered. These are some instances which we have experienced or which we have learned during our professional experience, that how the officers they behave and how the taxpayers can take care of these situations. Again, repeating what Bimal sir said, that we are not advocating or not supporting any bona fide, any malified taxpayers, the person who is evading the taxes. This is a provision only those people who are into wrong transactions or any bogus transactions, only they should be scared of. Other people, please keep calm. Whenever any search team is coming, don't get, don't panic or don't get jittery just because the fact that they have come. Because due to that state of, when you are in that state of mind, you tend to give wrong statements, you tend to give wrong documents, which can always go against you. Very important, like Rana sir also has also mentioned in his session, whenever any search team is coming, please ask for their authorization. There is no harm in asking. It's just like any person is coming, any police officer comes to arrest someone, you ask for a search warrant or a arrest warrant. So it's simply that you need to see the authorization. And if the authorization is not of the appropriate officer, you can always deny any such search proceeding. Second thing, very important, when they come with the letter with respect to any particular entity. In practical scenarios, we have seen that many premises, they are functioning in such a way that the sister concerns or any third party is also operating from the same premises. Area sharing basis, people are working. So when they are coming with the letter, authorization letter to search a premises, you have to see that which premises they are searching. Don't start giving everything and anything relating to any premises. They might, during the initial discussions, try to get out all the information. You just talk about the premises on which the for which the letter is there. In case during any discussion they get a sense that the other premises are also, other entities are also operating from the same premises, they might ask you certain information and document. You have to be very, very clever in that sense to avoid those conversations. Try not to give the information to them relating to those entities which are not even covered under the letter. But let's say if you get stuck in such a position that they are literally asking for it, so not to offend them, you can give very bare minimum information just to satisfy their ego. That's it. Otherwise, legally, even that is not required. But yes, we all don't want to have any such conversation or any dialogues with the officer which goes into the wrong direction. Third point, very important. Sometimes they have, normally what we have seen, search proceedings are undertaken only when they have certain intelligence about any wrong transaction. Like classification related issues were there. People, the food and beverage industries, they got to know that there is some classification issue, 12%, 18% rate difference were there. So they had enough information that people are doing a wrong classification and wrong taxes are being paid. So wherever these are specific, allegations or specific points that they lay down, you will get to know. You should be smart enough to understand from them that what is the point that they are looking for. It should not be like a general audit. If you feel like that they are asking for just give your books, we want to see this and that, and we want to see, then you can maybe raise your voice and check with them that if there anything specific to do any search proceedings, they can proceed. But it's not a general audit that they can just start sitting and taking out the information. So again, normally it doesn't happen, but wherever such things happen, the taxpayers can always try to turn around the tables by avoiding such information giving if it is not a very specific pointed search. CCTV cameras is something that we have seen in practice, that the officers, they come and ask you to switch off. Legally, there is no provision under law wherein they can do it. But when they do this, means they are going to take some very rigorous actions, or they can become even, violent in that terms. So this will give you a sense that how arrogant and with how much aggression they are coming. So maybe you have to tone down to that level. So these are certain things where you get to know when you fall in that situation. We are just giving you a glimpse that this is how it happens. And God forbid if you fall in such situation, maybe these pointers will help you to face those situations at that point of time. Giving all the documents which is covered under the letter, please don't hide anything. This can go against you. They can always go for a non-cooperation and fraud related allegations. Whatever they are asking, so long as it is part of the search proceeding provided to them, any document thing, etc., they are seizing, they can seize, they have the powers. Constant threat of arrest is there, which we have heard earlier also. Only again, people who are in a malified transaction need to be scared of these arrests. If it is not one of those transactions where the power of arrest has been given, then there is no need for you to be scared of. And just don't try and don't start conceding to anything and everything they are saying. They will only threat you, do arm twisting, just to bring you at that mental state where you start surrendering to whatever they want you to surrender. So if you are not a malified taxpayer, you're a bona fide taxpayer, please keep your calm. Don't get bogged down by the fact that they are threatening you to the arrest. You have done a valid transaction. Maybe there can be some clerical errors, there can be some misouts. Doesn't mean that there is a malified intention or a malified transaction which has been done by the taxpayers. No coercive recoveries can be done by them. This we have already seen. Whenever they will do search, they will prepare a panchnama. Please try and get and obtain a copy of panchnama. Practically, it is not given, but maybe if you get into certain relationship with the officer, you build up that relationship. They might even give it to you after the search proceedings are completed. Any statements which are made under threat or coercion can be retracted by the taxpayers. You have this right. This is a very important right which most of the taxpayers, they don't know, and anything which they have written in the their written statements or in the panchnama, when the they record certain things, this goes against the taxpayers. Now the question comes that they don't give me the copy of statement. How do I get to know? Rana sir very clearly pointed out in the earlier session that you have to be very careful, and that's why we are discussing these things with you, that you get to know that this is how it is going to happen. And if something like this happens, you have to be very, very vigilant. The minute you sign any statement, they record any statement, quickly, immediately after the proceeding, since it's fresh in your mind, quickly jot down what was asked, what you answered, what was given, what was not given. So this is something within that time frame, within that mindset, you can quickly jot down and you can keep it ready with you, that tomorrow if you want to retract anything, you can simply write an email or a letter and saying that so and so statement should be read like this, and that's it, nothing more than that. Sometimes they will issue summons also. Normally, they don't have power to arrest you, or take you to the or to their office or to the police station. But they have the powers to issue summon. Practically, they issue summon under Section 70 there and then. Now, what is to be done? You can always ask for the time. Section 70 summon is not a arrest warrant sort of a thing. They give you a time to come. There are certain specific guidelines that during odd hours, beyond the working hours, or in any circumstances, the summons or the persons are not bound to attend to summon. You can simply write a letter or request them that you will come tomorrow during the working hours, or you will be represented by your authorized representative. These are the rights which are available to you. If you feel like that you don't want to go with the officer there and then, this is what you can do at that point of time. And last but not the least, which I always say to every taxpayer, is please state the truth. If you don't know anything, specifically mention that this is not your domain, you don't know about it, you'll not be able to answer. But don't say anything which is beyond truth, because anything which comes into comes in their hand, it can go against you. So this is something which is very important. You need to keep in mind when the search proceedings are done. The most important thing is, don't panic. The minute you start panicking, you lose your control on the situation, you lose your calm. And why we discuss this is to get you through how the search proceeding starts and how they end, and what all happens during the entire search proceeding. So this is something, when if any of you fall in such situation, these points will quickly click into your mind that if something like this happens, this is what I can do, and this is how I can come out of the situation. The last part is, again, any payment recovery which is happening during the proceedings or the investigation. Courts have very clearly held that there are no powers which have been given to the officers to recover such money. Even in the case of Bhumi Associates, Gujarat High Court has directed the CBIC to issue the guidelines, which have still not come till date, that any such recovery, etc., during the proceeding should not be done. Even if the taxpayer wants to pay anything voluntary, he can do it only after the proceedings are over. And everything has to be done in a formal way. Any grievances, etc., can also be reported by the taxpayer. But unfortunately, we don't have any such proceedings, any such guidelines given by the CBIC, either in public domain or even to the department officers. Another case of Nandi Dal means, like Bimal sir clearly highlighted, that any amount that a taxpayer is paying cannot be deemed to be an advance tax. And because one, it has been recovered under coercion, and if he wants to take it back, he wants the refund of that amount, that should be allowed. You cannot say that money that he's paying is a self-assessment tax, even without having the provisions of Section 73 and 74 being initiated. And the last one, which is very, very important ruling, which Rana sir has also discussed about the Swiggy case, that any such recovery which is made during the investigation should not partake the color of a self-assessed tax or any advance tax, and the taxpayers have all the rights to take the refund. So let's say in any of the situation, any taxpayer falls into such a situation where they have to pay or they are forced to pay, then they can at least claim the refund, because this is not a proceeding which is, or not a payment made under Section 73(5) or a 74(5), for which the tax appropriation can be done at a later stage. With this, I would end my presentation, and I would request all of you to please stay safe and follow the COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you.